From the famous multiplayer game getting an adaptation to hiring people that love the game, here's everything you need to know about the upcoming Dead by Daylight movie. Starting off with the best news of the year, Dead by Daylight is getting a movie adaptation. Yep, that's right, it's finally happening. As you all know, since 2016, Dead by Daylight is a multiplayer game that has terrified the bejesus out of more than 50 million fans. And if you're not really a gamer person, that's okay. Dead by Daylight, which was made by Behavior Interactive, is said to be a deadly game of hide and seek, and as easy as it sounds, it really isn't. This co-op horror survival game has 4 survivors that must escape a fog-filled arena while a 5th player controls a monster that wants to kill them. And it was an instant success after a lot of influencers and gamers started to stream the game. The developer, Mathieu Cote, even said that the number of players keeps on increasing every single day, especially when it went free on Epic Games for a while. The numbers really skyrocketed, and now some of the top names in horror are making a full-length movie based on this slasher plot. James Wan and Jason Blum don't want to waste any time after the success of Megan, so they've already found their next big screen project together. And they're 2 of the biggest names in the horror film industry too. Remember Saw, Insidious, or The Conjuring? Yeah, them. Wan and Blum have been talking about a possible merger between their 2 production companies, Atomic Monster and Blumhouse. And the exciting news of a full-length adaptation comes right after that. Also, the horror-savvy pair is said to be in talks with Universal Pictures about a first-look deal. So, if that works out well, you can expect a horror adaptation soon. And by horror, I mean pretty terrifying horror. Besides, the best part is, Stephen Mulrooney, Executive Vice President at Behavior Interactive, said that he couldn't be happier to work with Blum and Wan. And he can't wait to expand the Dead by Daylight universe with them both. In the last 7 years, Behavior Interactive has released a lot of crossover content with famous horror franchises, such as Evil Dead, Resident Evil, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Left 4 Dead, and more. And as I said before, this is just one more example of how video games are being turned into movies. Plus, the new business was announced just days after Blumhouse said it was starting its own gaming division. James Wan, who's also the founder and CEO of Atomic Monster, said that the Behavior team has created a love letter to the world of horror, and that was all possible by building an amazing world full of atmosphere and scary bad guys that's perfect for a scary movie adaptation. Not gonna lie, a Dead by Daylight movie makes so much more sense than whatever Pixels was. Heck, it might even be better than what the live-action Pac-Man movie could be. Even though Dead by Daylight has its own original survivors and killers, most of the popular characters are taken from other horror games, TV shows, and movies, like Nightmare on Elm Street's Freddy. And even though the team is still searching for a director and screenwriter, it'll be exciting to see how Blumhouse and Atomic Monster adapt the game, which, by the way, uses many famous horror characters. That, or they could just skip making a horror movie and use the dating game from Dead by Daylight. To be honest, who wouldn't want a romantic comedy with a centaur? Blum said that they know there are a lot of Dead by Daylight fans out there, and they think it's really important to find someone who understands and loves this world in the same way they do. That'll help them bring the video game to the big screen in the best way possible. So, the big question is what this Dead by Daylight movie will be about. I'd personally love to know how the Trapper or the Wraith got started killing people in Behavior's game. But I also wouldn't be disappointed by a scary version of putting the survivors in the fog and having the nurse chase after them. I'd also love to see a collection of horror movies set in the same world as Dead by Daylight. They could tell us those horrifying origin stories and survivors fixing generators for 2 hours while being chased by monsters in the dark. Because keeping in mind, they'll have to include include all the important characters of the game in the movie, especially because you can't have this adaptation without the Trapper and the original 4 survivors. I mean, sorry, but those are facts. If you're a true Dead by Daylight fan, you just can't forget his bear traps. Plus, the Huntress is best if you need the audience to get their sympathy out for her. And then there's Fang Min, the Doctor, and Adam Francis too. The list just goes on and on. But here's my note to the screenwriters. Forget one of these characters, and the Dead by Daylight fandom will be on to you. For the game itself, this could make it possible to license new content for the game in the future. The world of the Entity will be very exciting to see on the big screen. Will they show the story of Dwight, Claudette, Jake, and Meg being held captive by the Trapper? Or will they go in a different direction to find new characters with new stories? Guess you and I'll just have to wait and see. However, a lot of film critics are questioning who they're gonna choose as the director. And all of them, including me, are pointing their fingers at Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin. I mean, their directing skills are insanely good. You'd understand if you had watched The Last of Us. And honestly, even though they'd be super busy with season 2 of their show, it'd be a win-win situation for Behavior and Blumhouse. Or maybe Andy Muschietti, who has already shown that he's very good at adapting other people's works. Like, remember when he made It by Stephen King into a movie? Pennywise may have more in common with The Entity than with Dead by Daylight's clown, but it's clear that Muschietti knows how to build tension. I'll say this much, this one's a pipe dream, but it'd be the coolest thing ever if the Dead by Daylight movie gets the director of Halloween back in the game. John Carpenter is a gamer himself, and he's said to be interested in making a Dead Space movie. If nothing else, I'd love to hear him play a piece for the movie's soundtrack. But here's the thing, the movie's far from getting released for now, and I can't even say when the production is going to start, especially since if they end up choosing Druckmann and Neil, which I think is very less likely, they'll have to wait for them to end season 2 first, because Dead by Daylight's movie requires a focus of its own. It was easier for The Last of Us to turn into a 9-episode-long series because it had its own plotline, and that's a story-based game. Here, it's just a multiplayer video game where people just try not to get hooked up by the monster killer. But I guess nothing is certain for now, and that's probably the reason why Blumhouse is taking its time to find the perfect screenwriter for this. Either way, it'll be worth it. Anyways, that's all the information I have on the Dead by Daylight adaptation for now.